Well, hello and welcome once again to A Goodman's Tale. I'm Josh. A Goodman's Tale is a place where we can sit down, we can talk about the good, the bad, the nitty, the gritty, life's ups, life's downs. Basically, it's a place, a safe place where we can all tell our story. Listen, if you are enjoying these podcasts, we ask that if you would like, share, and subscribe. That being said, let's get into it. All right, guys, today, what an honor it is to have Mrs. Renea Buchen out with us. You want to talk about a story of stories, just introduced, and literally spent the first few minutes just getting to know you. And Renea, the story that you have. But before we jump into, because your story is a very deep story. So before we jump in and talk about your story, tell me a little bit about, so what are some of the craziest, funnest places you've ever been?
I would have to say Joshua Tree, California.
Really? Yeah.
Where they grew rocks, right?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, very different from where I come from.
And where, what was exciting about it? What did you enjoy about living there or staying there?
Well, during the daytime, it's definitely hot and, bit of a wilderness experience for me. But in the evening, the stars, just looking at it, it's just wow, the majestic, view of the galaxy. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was, this was years ago now, maybe 20 years ago, my whole family, we had two vans and we did this cross-country trip across the United States. And we stopped in places like Alabama and Texas, and then finally we made it out to the deserts of New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And again, to be out in that wilderness place, the stars are just unbelievable. Just, and obviously, viewing the majesty of that creation and just being like, wow, Lord, you made all these galaxies, you made all these things, and you still care about me. You still, it's like I'm so small. I'm so tiny in this universe, and it's vast, it's huge. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, let me give a huge shout out for Marked with Hope. This is Renea's book, and basically, guys, this is her story. The story we're going to tell today is chronicled in here. So I'd highly recommend that you pick one of these up, just because it is indeed marked with hope. And so, born in the Philippines, and go from there. You were born, and what happened?
Yeah, so I was born in Subic Bay, Olongapo City, which is one of the, I believe, the second largest U.S. naval base.
Okay.
Back then, and my mom and dad were met there. My dad was in the U.S. Navy and was stationed there, and met my mom, fell in love, and got married. And then my dad thought that he was just gonna live there. He loved the Philippines and the Filipinos, and never really worked on getting my mom's and my paperwork. So tragically, his baby brother passed away. He had to go back to the States. Okay. And then I was left there with my mom. And then my mom, prior to 11 months before I was born, I had an older sister that died in infant death. And so both my parents, that was very hard for them. Yeah. And then so after my dad left, my mom really struggled in the with the depression, and then trying to raise me. She did the best that she could. She got in some drugs and trouble, ended up in the jail, and I was left with the babysitter and her best friend. Long story short, they thought she was never gonna get out, and I was stolen and sold. And when my mom came back, and I was gone, and
you were stolen by
the babysitter.
Really? So your babysitter, whoever was,
the one that was caring
for you, and came in, kidnapped you, stole you literally from your mother. And what happened?
And so I heard of a family who was looking for a baby 5 hours away in Cavite, So it's about south of Manila, which is Manila is the capital of the Philippines. And so they got me, and when my mom got out, and she was trying to get me back, she tried to hide it from my grandmother, my dad's, who lives in New York.
Yeah.
And but it came out, and she was trying to get me back, but they couldn't. The family who my foster parents now, was very influential, and they couldn't, she couldn't get me back. My dad tried to come back, and it was just, it was very sad.
I mean, that's and I can. So I've dealt with a measure of drug abuse, even my family, and when there are situations like that, it's very realistic to see, when you're in that level of situation, hardship, this most likely impoverished babysitter is desperate, steals you, takes you, kidnaps you. It doesn't mean it's by no means all right or okay, but that's what desperation will do to you. Sells you to a family that's 5 hours away. I mean, literally, it's a situation where wrong, to the next level, to a place where, I mean, goodness sake, I can only imagine the feelings your grandmother felt, the feelings your father felt, the feelings your mother felt. Absolutely a place of just such challenge and desperation. So here you are, you're sold to this family who's 5 hours away. How does the story go from there?
Yeah, my dad came back and tried to communicate to the family, and he wanted to go to where I was, but his friends, they said, oh no, Mr. Rogers, don't go there because they're gonna kill you. And it was just, I think at one point he tried to hire a lawyer, but it was just, we're trying to make a lot of money out of him to try. It was just really crazy. And then my mother, of course, wasn't helping, and she was just, all she could do was just, cry. She felt bad, and the relationship was, so long story short, my dad finally, he was only there for a couple of weeks, so he had to go back to the States. And he was just, after losing, my older sister, and then losing me, and then losing his baby brother. So actually 33 years of drug abuse. His life was, he was in the military, and finally he just couldn't, he got canned, and drugs and stuff. So, but the good news about that is my dad, after that 33 years of, he finally, turned his life towards the Lord. And so I am very blessed, when I met him, last year, that everything, but he said he never forgotten about me, and he always, pray that, God, I'm not there for my baby, but please, take
be
care
with
of her.
Yeah, keep her safe.
So I was up with my foster parents, of course, another.
How old? So when you were sold to them, how old were you?
I was 5 years old.
5 years old. And how long were you with them? Just until you reached adulthood? How long were you with them?
Well, I stayed there. There was a lot of physical, beatings and verbal abuse and all that stuff. So I, when I was 11, actually when I was 8 years old, I started running away. Okay. So finally, at the 8 times, just before I turned 12, I left for good.
Really?
And so ever since then, I was, and I went back to Olongapo. So from 5 hours away, went back to Olongapo, Subic Bay, where I was born. And I thought, I wanted to look for my mom, but of course, I was able to do that.
Yeah, you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
12 years old.
12 years
what do you know
old,
about finding,
Yes, yeah. So I end up, working as a laundry woman, which is,
and you were 12.
I was 12. Yes. So doing laundry by hand,
and let me just
10
stop you,
hours a
Renee.
day.
Yeah, let me stop you right there, Renee, because it's so interesting. In America, so many in our society, I try to tell people all the time, I'm like, these atrocities still take place today. Been to China, seen it in Haiti, Thailand. We think that things like slavery and forced child labor, that those things are all things of the past, but they are not. Friends, this is, living proof that these things still take place. So at 12 years old, you're in a position of being, literally forced labor as a laundry woman, working how many hours?
10 hours a day.
10 hours a day. And did you have a family you were living with?
No, what I end up doing is, so I look for work, so I end up, there was a time that, I was maid who lives,
Mm-hmm,
they have, this little room for me, but I would have to get up. It was, I do everything, cooking and cleaning, and I have to be up at 4:30 in the morning, cooking breakfast for them. But
Yeah.
I would stay until 1 o'clock, 2 in the morning ironing. So it's
Yeah.
not. It was brutal. So
Yeah.
I decided, I will be my own laundry woman. So I go to different houses. Every day and do their laundry. So usually,
Okay.
a family of 4, they'll have their laundry for a week.
Yep.
And
And they
so
just give you
do
the
that.
big bundles of laundry?
Yeah, and then I found this place, that I was, it's like a plywood shack, that I was renting for a very minimal amount of money,
Yeah.
no doors.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it floods, when it rains, my plywood bed is just elevated. And
Yeah.
but what's interesting, you mentioned about slavery, the family, my foster parents, they have 8 kids. And they told their oldest daughter that they wanted to find an ugly baby to make sure that this baby will never get married.
Yeah.
So I'm basically, it's like, make sure that, it's ugly. And so I was become
Yeah.
actually
Yeah,
like a
I mean,
slave.
it's almost like a Cinderella story, where the wicked stepmother, but of course in this case, the foster parents are just, and again, it's something. One of the things that's kind of common in Haiti is people who live in rural Haiti will give their children to somebody who lives in the city, and this child is
it happens in the Philippines
an
as well,
indentured slave, but the parents in the rural country are just hoping to make a better life by sending their child to the city. And when I tell you that so many of those children, they're beaten, they're working insane hours, they're never paid, they're given basically a bed and a little bit of food every day. And again, it's something that is seen, so often, even still today. So you're living on the streets, you're got your own laundry business going, and one thing we didn't mention: when did you receive? Had you had a relationship with Christ yet?
Well, I actually, my foster parents, they are very, Catholic, which is, a lot of people in the Philippines. But when I was 8 years old, we're celebrating the Day of Dead, November 1st, where, all the Filipinos go to the cemetery and celebrate.
Did they bring food?
Yes,
yes,
of course.
Haiti's the same way.
Yeah. And so I was there and just, I thought, I would walk around and play with the candle drips.
I got to tell you a quick story.
Yes.
So a friend of mine in Haiti, they would have the Day of the Dead. They'd bring food. He would go and eat the food so that people would think that their relatives had gotten
the food.
So it was anyway. Terrible story, but go ahead.
So I was playing with the candle. I was 8 years. I thought I was 8 years, like 7 years old, because I found that I was actually a year younger.
Okay.
I thought I was born in 1975, but my dad said no, 1976. And so I was 7 years old, and I was playing with the candle drips, and then there was this lady, and she was sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
I can't.
In the cemetery.
Yes, in the cemetery. Yes.
Wow.
And so I've never heard, because my foster parents, I wasn't raised, with, oh, good job, you tell your stories, that kind of a thing. So she started telling me, the stories about Jesus, how, he's the Son of God, he came, the basic, simple message of the gospel. And, he died, for my sins, he went back he rose up from the dead after 3 days, went back to heaven, and then he's coming back for me. And so she was telling me this story, and I was just really fascinated because nobody told me stories, and she was, very kind. And then after she was telling me the story, she said, would you like to accept, Jesus as your Lord and Savior? I said, yes. Said the prayer about then. And then she gave me, before she was leaving, she was getting ready to leave, she gives me the Gospel of John.
Yes.
So I kept that. I treasured that. But at that time, I don't think I actually started reading it until I was maybe, 10 or 11 years old. And I find myself, I read it, then I get kind of sleepy, but I kept it.
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't able to actually go attend to actually born again Christian church until
church.
I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Because I was, when I.
So you're there. You are. You received Jesus at 7. You have a relationship.
Yes.
You're unable to go to church. Things get so bad at your foster parents, you run away, and then basically from 12 to 15,
I was busy, providing for myself.
providing, making the best life you could.
Yeah.
And what took place at 15? What occurred there to enable you to begin going to church?
Okay, So I had a neighbor who I heard, she was a born again Christian. I did some laundry for her, and in her house she's got this, a big Bible, and I would, every once in a while, I would read it. And then I asked her, about so she's born again Christians, and I said, what church do you go to? Because I knew part of, after I received, Jesus Christ, that was one of, part of the growth. I go to church. And so she said, oh yeah, I go to this church, but there's a church and close to the base. That used to be the U.S. Naval Servicemen Center that was built by the U.S. Navy, and so I was like, oh, okay, Calvary Chapel. And so I told her, okay, thank you for that information. But I was already kind of looking, and so long story short, I decided this one particular day that I wasn't going to go to work, but I was going to go to church. So I visited that place. I rode the jeepney, went in there, and it was closed. So I looked at there was the
service.
The come unto me, that scripture that says, like, come unto me, all who are heavy laden. That really spoke to me. It was like just right there in the church. Then I look at their service, and I said, okay, so 9:00 Sunday, I'm going. And then
consider how heavy burden you were. The life you had already lived. You're only 15 years old,
and
no
partying for this teenager. I was like busy,
working. And again, just going from the point of being stole, kidnapped, sold, literally in a slavery situation, finally running away, and then from the age of 12, making life for yourself. I'll say American 15-year-olds. I got a 15-year-old daughter who I could not imagine having lived that kind of life. And again, talking about you're marked with hope. It is so prevalent that you have been marked with that hope. So you begin to cultivate a relationship with, I don't want to say you begin with the church.
Yes.
Where you're beginning to, and how did that go?
Yeah, so I go, that Sunday service, I sat down, I wasn't so sure what to expect, because it was, I knew it would be different than the Catholic church. And so they did the praise and worship, and I was like, oh yeah, I love music, and I've always been, fond of, singing and so, and then the message, it was very first time that I felt like, so they did praise and worship. I was like, oh, that was, very, breath of fresh air, different, from the Catholic. But anyways, so yes, and then the pastor started speaking, and I was like, it felt like, to me, the pastor knew me and my story, for whatever reason, the message that particular Sunday was just really speaking to me in a very fresh kind of way that, I've always, prayed and talked to the Lord. Even though the foster parents, were, Catholic and prayed, I always knew that there's something, the Papa Jesus, and I started calling actually the Lord after I accepted, Papa Jesus, Papa Jesus, and then the Virgin Mary. But I knew I always loved to go outside and pray, looking at the sky, because I knew there was something, he's not just this, figures. And so the pastor was speaking, and so I left that church, and I'm like, Lord, we just this renewed hope. And I was just like, wow, for a longest time I always felt, like alone, but the Lord was just, it was so, he was speaking to me.
Well, and it's so cool, because it's very challenging for me to even imagine the level of difficulty, right, that you're experiencing. You make a profession of faith when you're 7. And it's not until you're 15 that you're able to start going to church and really experience the blessing of the unburdening, the taking off of the burdens and the weights, and being able to rest. And again, I can only imagine what a blessing the praise and worship, the word, all of that was to somebody who was so beat down.
Yes, and the people, was like the sense of family. They just, kind of want to pray for you, and I was just like, oh wow. Yeah,
that's so good. So it's really, because you're at this point, you're so parched, you're so dry, and you just need. It's like I just need, and God at that time, just so what a. I mean, it's miraculous that God would lead you there for that time. And tell me the rest. So you're there. You're at church until you're 15. At what point do you meet your husband? When does he come into the picture?
So what happened, and so I told them, yes, I was looking for work, I changed of work, and it just happened that I think it was like, about 7 months later, so they were praying for work for me, even though I was like working. But I said, I wanted to work, for a Christian family. And so the Lord sent a missionary, couple missionary from San Diego. and they were looking for a laundry woman. And so they recommended me, and so we did an interview, and so I got hired by this special couple, and I started doing laundry for them. And it just happened that they were about to take over, the directorship of the Bible school.
Oh, wow.
And so that was just very exciting. So I was working for them 2 days a week, and then the 2 days a week became 3 days a week. The wife started doing the ladies group on Saturday, and of course she would invite me, and all of a sudden I find myself being at the church, every day.
Every day,
It's like, So Tuesday prayer meeting, Wednesday Bible study, the Thursday street kids ministry.
And being able to still work for this Christian family.
So I left, that was just really, and the amount of money that they were going to be paying me, they paid me really well and fed me really well. So it was very easy for me to give up the other ones, which is very exhausting.
Yeah, well, and what a blessing that is to go from working in a very secular environment, because individuals can be very mean, rude, especially to laundry women or people who are house cleaners, very demanding, and again, treating you very similar to a slave or a servant. And then to have God just supernaturally come in and turn that around, where now you're working for a Christian family who bring you in and they love you.
Exactly. And so that happened, for a year, and then all of a sudden I developed this just thirst, and like I wanted to know God more, and I wanted to go to the school that they were directing. But the problem with that is, I never finished, in a school and college, and so it's a very extensive, year, curriculum that they have, and so long story short, I end up going to that, to the school. At first they said, but you're gonna have to, you cannot be working for us if you're gonna do this, because it would require, 5 days a week to the school, and it was just very, and so I'm like, I was saddened because I was so used to providing for myself. But they said, oh, you don't have to worry about it. It's like they provided, the living situation for me. They provided, everything that I need to be able to do the schooling for 1 year. So that was the turnaround. And then after I graduated, I was like, I thought I was going to go back working for them as a laundry woman. But they said no. So they offered me, a job as a translator, for them, because the couple, they're English. And, when you're doing, eschatology and apologetics and all these Bible classes, you have to be able. You need a good translator. Yeah, and they thought, I've done really well, with the schooling, and I must understood, that for, the Lord's just been very gracious to me and helping me out to understand, the English language. And so I became a translator that first year, and then a couple years later, assistant administrator, and that's where it started. And then 3 years later.
And how old are you at this point? Because you're what, 18, 19, 20, something like
yes, so I was 18.
Still very young.
Very young.
Yeah.
And so after that, 3 years later, they went back to the States. I took over, the directorship of the Bible school for about a year. And then I thought, but I always wanted to go to school of worship, and that was kind of my main thing. That didn't happen. I got a call from Dumaguete City, which is another island in the Philippines, a Calvary Chapel Training Center, to work there. And so I said yes. And so 1 week, so that was very different from where I come from. The culture is different.
Yes.
The land of gentle people, they said. And so, and it happened just the 7 days, actually, that after I got there, my husband, along with a group of missionaries from Calvary Chapel in Yucca Valley, California, was coming there. And that first night that I was going to be involved in the worship, my husband was also going to be in the worship, and he plays trumpet.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how we, he came there, on a short-term mission to help build a house for the unwed mothers at the orphanage. And that's what. I mean, that's just what a beautiful story. So you guys, you end up, courting and seeing one, and then you end up. Did you get married here in the States or back in the Philippines? We did in the States. I had a commitment at the college, and so I finished that commitment, and then but I actually ended up coming. So he went back. He was just there for 3.5 months, and so I ended up actually coming to the States on R1 visa, which is a religious worker visa, because I was working at the Calvary Chapel Training Center, and then they have the extent in Yucca Valley, which is the main actually is Costa Mesa, so that was that, and so
so you married him. Again, guys, keep in mind the depth of this story. A young lady who is stolen, kidnapped, sold into slavery, all the things we've talked about, and God literally turns all of that around and gets married, has kids? Tell us about,
So I have, 3 girls. They're almost 21, 20, and 15. My youngest is the one I said, I used to tease, my friends. Yes, I made the other 2, and then the other one I paid for, because she was my, she was born in my heart, my adopted. And so after I married, my husband, many years later, I wanted to go back to the Philippines and work with the street kids again and start an orphanage. Wow. So we did that on missions. We were there for 3 years. And then Lydia, my youngest child, she was an unwanted pregnancy. So her mom already had 7 kids and wanted to abort her. And so we were like, they were, she was looking. So I ended up taking her home, a day after she was, a couple hours after she was born. And we thought, we started the Ministry Lifehouse Village. And we thought, hey, it would be neat. Let's make the first baby, our, our own.
Yeah, wow.
And so, so after that, 3 kids, and then my husband, we got involved in the church and just, doing what I love, worship and just ministering in any capacity.
That is so God cool. Provides. Before I conclude and wrap up, I want you to tell the portion of the story how you finally got reunited with your dad.
With
in
my
the
dad,
DNA.
yes. So that happened actually last year. My husband wanted to give me a gift for my birthday, the ancestry. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and then it came back and it showed that I have a match with this particular person. And then it turns out, that was my maternal grandmother.
Yes.
Who lives in New York. She's 86. And so how did you do that? Did you call her? Well, I did.
Or email?
Well, I called, but then I hung up.
Because I was so scared.
But I was like, what if it's not,
Yeah.
And so I waited for my husband to come. He makes the call. And so as soon as, he said, yeah, this is Dawn Buchen. I believe, I'm married to your granddaughter. And then all of a sudden, my grandmother said, Renee? And my husband says, Renee, because we always thought it was the pronounced Renee. I said, no, Renee. And then my husband said, do you have a son that was in the Subic Bay? Yes. And the name
Rogers.
My
goodness.
And so that was that. So they talked for a little bit, but I was like so nervous, and I was just crying. I was on my knee. I was just like, Lord, just overwhelming. It's like 45 years. Can you believe it? And so I got to talk to her. She's like, my darling, it's just the most beautiful I've heard. And she was just I actually call her mommy because I have 2 other siblings that calls her mother, and they raised them when they were because my dad was just still in his dark days of drugs and addiction. And so but my mom, my biological mom Dolly, calls her mommy, so that's why I call her mommy. And but that was just really amazing. Then after that, she's like, oh, I gotta call my son. He would. I have to make sure that son, are you sitting down?
Yeah.
And sure enough.
I mean, like
later,
I said, take your breath away.
Yes,
That's whoa. Because all of the questions, whatever happened to my baby girl, whatever happened to my granddaughter, and then you get a phone call one day, and it's like. Wow.
Yeah, my dad said she found me. I looked for her, but she found me.
Yeah, after all the time he had spent looking for you too. Wow, just what an amazing story. Friends, listen, I hope you've enjoyed this interview, because I know that I have. Go out and get a copy of Marked with Hope. Again, Renee, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for
and
having me.
What a great, like I said, just what a great and amazing story. As always, friends, if you've enjoyed this episode and other episodes, like, share, and subscribe. And remember what I tell you every week: get out there and live life with all you've got.